this. Here we go. Ki tetse lemilchama alayvecha. That's this week's parsha that we just finished doing. If you go to war against your enemy, so the Bali Musar, they learn, what does it mean against your enemy? It means your Yetzer Hara. A person has to fight their Yetzer Hara. Not the things that they do on their own, but the things that the Yetzer Hara convinces them to do. So you need to fight against them. And if you do go against your Yetzer Hara, Hashem will give the Yetzer Hara into your hands. Hashem will help you succeed. That's what the Balei Musar say. Now, the very first thing that we have in Parshas Ki Tetse is the Parsha of Yafas Toar. What is a Yafas Toar? A Yafas Toar means a soldier is out in the battlefield. He's in war. Now, what happened? The soldiers fight. So most of the men soldiers get killed. Who's left behind? The women soldiers. The women. So what did the women do? They often dressed in very provocative, very beautiful clothing, hoping that they can use their beauty to be spared, that they wouldn't be killed. And the Torah says that under those circumstances, when you're in a melchemes reshus, if you want to take this woman and take her to your family and to your wife, so you can take her, you can bring her home, she has to take a whole month to mourn the loss of her family. So that's the Parsha of Yafas Toar. So there's a famous Gemara. It's an interesting Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says as follows: Daf Kuv Zayin Omar Aleph. Omar Rav Yehuda Omar Rav. Bikesh David la'avod avodah zara. David HaMelech wanted to worship idols. Did you ever hear this Gemara before? David HaMelech wanted to go worship an idol. Avodah zara. What happened? His good friend Hushai Ha'archi came, Karua Katanto, with his clothes, his jacket torn, and earth on his head. Omar lo leDavid. So he said to the king, to David, Yomru, do you want history to record Melech shekamoscha yavod avodah zara? A king like you worshipped idols? Yes. Correct. Omar lo. So he said back to him, Melech shekamosi yagu b'no? Would you rather history writes that my son killed me? I mean, this is when Avshalom was rebelling against him. So he says, at least if I worship idols, people will say, oh, you know why your son killed him? Hashem wanted it. So there won't be a chilul Hashem. So he says, Muta, better, Yavor Avodah Zara, I should worship idols. Val Yizchal Hashem Shamayim B'far Hesya. And Hashem's name should not be made, embarrassed. So then Hushai says, I don't understand. You're trying to explain why Avshalom wants to kill you? Omar, my time of Konasab is Yafas Toar. Why don't you marry Yafas Toar? Because Avshalom was the son of a Yafas Toar, a non-Jewish girl. Omar lay. So he said, all right, you can't ask me that question. Yafas Toar, Rachmona Shaya. The Torah says I'm allowed to. So if I did what the Torah says, you're telling me something bad can happen because I did what the Torah says. That's not fair. Omar lay. So then Hushai says, Lo darashta smuchim, don't you read the psukim, what follows next? After Yafas Torah, what comes right afterwards? The whole parsha of a ben Sora Umora, a rebellious son. So David HaMelech, you want to do what the Torah says, but you got to read the whole page. Don't read one line and say that's what the Torah wants. You got to read a little further. If you read a little further, you would have seen that you'll have children from a wife you love and a wife you don't love, and then all of a sudden you'll see the whole parsha of a ben Sora Umora. So the Gemara goes back and forth with this with David HaMelech. The David HaMelech wanted to find an excuse for Avshalom. Now the truth is, Avshalom was not a ben Sora Umora. Ben Sora Umora is different, and it's from age 13 to 3 months. But it's just the concept that you have to be very careful who you marry and the process upon which you raise children. Because children are affected by the home. Children are affected by what they see around them. children are affected by the influences of a father and a mother. These all affect children. So the Torah is trying to teach us that, Yishmael never killed any Jews. So the Torah judged him for what he was. His children killed a lot of Jews. That was his children, that was not him. So there's a whole understanding of how the Beis Din in heaven and the Beis Din in earth view the world, and things are differently. So, that's really what it's all about. Now, it's interesting that Parshas Ki Tetse has 74 mitzvahs. It's one of the biggest parshios with mitzvahs. And it comes right before Rosh Hashanah. In Rosh Hashanah we say, Kisu b'sefer zechuyos. Put me in the book of mitzvahs. How do I get zechuyot? Mitzvahs. So in Elul we read parshios that are full of mitzvahs. Why? Because mitzvah goreres mitzvah. If we can read a parsha full of mitzvahs, the idea would be that we should be able to have much more opportunities to do mitzvahs. So, he brings on over here, he says in L'choma aloi vecha, what I told you before, the Chassam Sofer says that the Yetzer Hora, in Tachanai alai machaneh, if a camp comes against me, bezos ani boteach, acha sha'alti. Sometimes one mitzvah alone is able to save you. Sometimes a person doesn't have to do 1,000 mitzvahs. Chassam Sofer says sometimes if you do one mitzvah and you do it the Shem Shemayim, we're going to see next week that the Tochacha talks about people that did mitzvahs, they weren't happy. It was Tachas Hashem Avdas Hashem L'kacha b'simcha. They didn't worship with simcha, with joy. So, it's important to know that when we do mitzvahs, we have to do it with simcha, we have to do it with joy. Okay. Comes the next parsha. What's the next parsha? It talks about a person has 2 wives. One wife he loves and one wife he hates. So now what does that mean? Is he still married to both wives? Probably not. What it means is you got married, the marriage was not successful, and therefore you got divorced and you got remarried. So you have an ex-wife and a current wife. Okay? The ex-wife is the wife you don't like, and the current wife is the wife you do like. That's the way the Torah seems to do it. So it talks about Yerusha, it talks about inheritance. According to the Torah, who gets a double portion? The Bechor, the firstborn. Why does the firstborn get a double portion?
Firstborn, Bechor.
Why? Why does he get double? That means, let's say a person has 4 children. How does it work? A person has 4 sons. So the first son gets a double portion. So what do? It's like you have 5 sons. You divide your inheritance. You have $100,000. You divide it into 5. The first son gets 40,000, and son number 2, 3, and 4 get 20, 20, and 20. That's how it works. Why does the firstborn get double? So one answer is because the first child makes you into a father, into a mother. It changes your status. You become a parent with the birth of the first child. So there's a special status. Of course, if the first child was a girl, the same thing would happen. Other people say that very often parents learn how to raise children by trial and error. And who's the guinea pig? The first child. It's always the first child that they're learning.
The first child is girl, so anyway the boy gets the double.
That's right, the boy gets a double portion, if the boy is a Bechor. If the girl is first, then they get equal.
Oh, they
According to the Torah, the girl doesn't get it all, because her husband's supposed to take care of her. And you can change that, of course. You can give your money to whatever you want. It only works if a person dies without a will.
Yeah.
But if you write a halachic will, you can divide anything any way you want. You can give every child whatever you want. This is all talking about without a will.
So if the boy is not behers, he don't get the
No, he doesn't get a double portion. And so some people say, so the first child, parents learn how to be parents on the first child, trial and error. There are some parents, the first child, every single time the child wakes up, they hold the child, they nurse the child, they take care of the child. By child number 5, the child could be eating mud and they could care less. They'll go through the wash, The first child, parents are meshuga. They're very overprotective of the first child. By the second child, by the 3rd, 4th, or 5th child already, the kid is running in the street and nobody knows twice. Nobody looks twice. It's just the way parents are. So now, the Vilna Gaon has a very fascinating shot over here. The Vilna Gaon says, you know what it's talking about over here? It's talking about as follows. The first mother, the first wife that you no longer like is pregnant. The second wife also gets pregnant. Now you have two women that are pregnant. But the second wife gives birth after 7 months. It's a premature birth. So which child was conceived first? The first wife's child, the one you don't like.
7 months?
But the second child was born first. He was 7 months. So who's the Bechor? The one who is conceived first, or the one who's born first? Who's the
Born.
Bechor? So the Vilna Gaon says, in this case, when we know who was conceived first, the one that's conceived first is the Bechor. So even though your second wife gave birth first, but since it was a premature baby, that's not the Bechor, the other one is. Very shocking Vilna Gaon. The Netziv says he doesn't believe the Vilna Gaon ever said this, but Rav Shlomo Kluger in Shulchan Aruch brings down that he heard from someone who heard from Reb Chaim Volozhin, this is exactly what happened.
You want to put AC on?
What?
AC on? You want to put AC on?
That's up to you. So now, if you want, you can. If you're warm, you can. Does it make a lot of noise, the AC? Okay, it's up to you. So now, let's understand this a little bit more. Okay? Let's understand this a little bit more. Let's say, for example, you have twins. You have twins. Okay? Identical twins. You have twins. Who's the Bechor?
Identical. Who came first?
So we don't know who was conceived first because they're twins. So whoever's born first is the
Yeah.
Bechor. Okay? Let's talk about another case. Yaakov and Esav. Which egg, was it the Yaakov egg or the Esav egg, was fertilized first?
Yeah.
Yaakov. Who was born first?
Esav.
Esav. According to the Vilna Gaon, who was the Bechor if Yaakov was conceived first?
Yes.
Yaakov. So Yaakov deserved to have the firstborn. So why do you have to buy it from Esav? Because since they were
he born
twins,
first.
nobody knew. So since Esav was born first, he had no choice but to buy it. But in Shemayim, Hashem said Yaakov did nothing wrong. Because he was conceived first. Reishis, oh no, he was the first. So if he was conceived first, he's the Bechor. That's what the Reishis, oh no. So that's what the Rav Shlomo Kluger says. He says that there's no problem over here. Yaakov is the firstborn because he was conceived first. And the child that's conceived first, that's considered the firstborn. So when you have twins, sometimes you don't know, so then you have no choice. You have to go after birth. But if you know for a fact that one child is born after 9 months, and one child is born 7 months early, the other child is the firstborn. The Chidah says something different. The Chidah brings down a Rambam. He says both mothers went into labor at the same time. But the mother that you divorced, the crown, the baby's head could be seen, and then the other baby came out first from the other woman. So since you could see his head, he's still the Bechor, even though this one was born first. That's what the Chidah says. He brings down a Rambam. The midwife, the lady who was giving, they were both in the hospital at the same time, and they say, oh, I see the head! And the other lady, all of a sudden the baby comes out. So who's the firstborn?
Come on.
Not the one who came out first, the one who you saw the head first. Because the minute you see the head, that's considered as if you were born. That's what the Rambam says. So that's what the Chidah says. It says, Lo yochol levaker es ben or ahuva al pnei, because you saw the head. Pnei means face. You saw the face of the ben, of the child of the Senua. Okay? So therefore, he says that, the Vilna Gaon's pshat is a very, very well-known pshat, very famous pshat. And we're talking about 2 women, 2 births, one wife you were married to before, one wife you weren't. They're both your children. There's no question that they're both your children, and both you have responsibility for. The only question is, who gets the right to be the firstborn? Okay, let's go on. What is the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan? Tell me what the mitzvah is.
Knowing the mother bird.
Send away the mother bird. Okay, so the Gemara says this is a easy mitzvah to do. You know, why is Shaluach HaKhan called an easy mitzvah? Hi. Why is Shaluach HaKhan called an easy mitzvah? Bless you.
What's Shua Hakan?
Shaluach HaKhan means you're walking, you find a nest. In the nest are a few eggs and a mother bird. And the eggs are kosher. That means it has to be kosher egg, because why would you take non-kosher eggs? So the halacha is you chase away the mother, shaleach to shalach et ha'em, take away the mother, and now you can take the eggs. Okay? So now, why is this called an easy mitzvah? So the Gemara says, you know why it's called an easy mitzvah? Because you don't have to prepare for it. That means you're walking, you're going for a walk in the forest park. And all of a sudden you see a nest. And eggs. You don't have to prepare. That means a mitzvah that you have to prepare for. You have to prepare for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shabbat. These are hard mitzvahs because you have to prepare. They require thought and study and work. But Shiluach HaKhan is an easy mitzvah. You don't prepare. You walk and poof, right in front of you is a nest. Okay.
So you pull them up and put it back, right?
You what?
Pull them back?
So now, according to the Torah, you send the mother away and you can take the eggs. Why would you take the eggs in the olden days? Because you were hungry. You're going to make yourself an omelet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Right? That's the logic. You send away the mother, you go, yes, ma'am.
You're allowed to take it with your hand? We learned that you have to take a wooden,
We're going to get to that in a moment. The mitzvah is, you see a nest, a mother and eggs. You send away the mother, you take the eggs. With your hands, you take the eggs. You want to make an omelet. The problem is, what are the chances you could use those eggs? Meaning as follows. You go to the store and you buy eggs, chicken eggs. You crack it open. Do you find the chicken inside? No. Do you find blood spots inside? Most of the time not. Why not?
Not fertilified.
They're not what?
Fertilified.
They're not fertilized.
Fertilized.
On the farm, where you have all these hens, there are no roosters. Okay? Now, this nest that the mother is sitting on the eggs, why is she sitting on these eggs?
She wants babies.
To have babies, to hatch. So if I take those eggs and open it up, what am I going to find inside?
Baby.
Either a small baby, which makes it trafe, or at least blood spots also. So the chances of even using these eggs is zero almost.
0.9.
0.000. That's why some people say, okay, the mitzvah is only pick up the eggs, put them back down, and let the mother come back.
Make sure you don't smell them.
But you don't want the mother to smell the human touch on the eggs. So some people say, oh, maybe just take a stick or something and lift up the eggs. So you don't touch the eggs with
Both
your
eggs.
hands. What?
You're supposed to
Just
put
pick
both,
it up,
not
put
one,
it up.
only enough, no?
Yeah, just,
Both of them.
if there's two, there might only be one egg.
It's not necessarily take with yourself to
Take it and go away with him.
Well, you can take the eggs and go away, but what are you going to do with those eggs?
throw away.
You're going to make an omelet? Chances are you can't use those eggs. They're fertilized. There's going to be a baby inside, a chicken inside, or blood spots.
And back time they used to eat it,
What?
and then back time when it.
So now everybody struggles. If I can't use the eggs, and if the eggs are not kosher because they're fertilized, so why am I sending away the mother bird? What's this mitzvah all about? See, I understand if there was a chicken and I chase away the chicken and I take the egg. I got it. That's what we do every day. But these are not chicken eggs. They could be a dove, a pigeon. They're not the eggs you normally eat. And they're fertilized. You can't use them. When you crack it open, it's full of blood. It's trafe.
When you chase the chicken and pick up the eggs, also is mitzvah.
Yes.
Why
But
is
what is the mitzvah? If I can't use the
I know.
eggs,
Why it's
what's
mitzvah?
the mitzvah?
Why
Yeah,
is the
what's
mitzvah?
it?
Why it counts?
So that's the question. So the Zohar says as follows. The Zohar says that when you chase the mother away and you're thinking about taking the eggs, what kind of a person are you? Are you a kind person, or are you a mean, cruel, horrible person? What kind of a person are you?
mean
You're a horrible person,
hunter.
right? You're a hunter, you're a horrible person. So the Zohar says that Hashem in Shemayim says, what's going on? A Jew is chasing the mother to take the children? Who does that? And then the Malachim say to Hashem, oh, it bothers you? You're just as bad, because you chased the Jews out of Israel and put them into Galut. Bring them back home to their mother, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So the Zohar says the mitzvah is that Hashem should get angry. And Hashem should say, who does this? So the angel should say, you do it. Every day the Jews are in Galut all over the world, and people are hurting them and killing them and anti-Semitism. Why don't you bring them back home to the nest? The nest is Israel. You chased away them from Israel. You're the cruel one. Now that's a shocking Zohar. That means we do this so Hashem should get embarrassed and bring us back. Now that's wild stuff, right? That's pretty wild stuff. The Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim says as follows. He says there's a halacha. If you shecht a cow, on the same day you can't shecht the child of the cow.
Both you
can't kill both on the same day. You're allowed to kill a cow. We're allowed to eat the meat. But if you know that there's a mother and a calf, and you shecht the mother, you can't kill the calf the same day. Because we don't wipe out a family overnight. Okay? So the Rambam says that the same way we chase the mother away, that the mother should be safe if we take the eggs. Because we can't take both. We can't take the mother and the eggs on the same day. So it's a mitzvah, he says, that creates a certain amount of rachamim. It's supposed to train us to be compassionate. Of course, it's not very compassionate. The compassionate thing to do will be to walk by the nest and do nothing, right? Leave them alone. But many times the mitzvahs are to train us. So we send the mother away, we pick up the eggs, we put the eggs back, the mother comes back. We do everything to train ourselves to practice rachamim. Mitzvahs are gezeros. They're not defined. This is not an act of rachamim. Because if a person says in Shemona Esrei or davening, Hashem, have rachamim like a mother has rachamim on the eggs, on the children, we quiet them. We say, no, don't talk that way. That's not how you're allowed to talk. So we don't do that. Mitzvahs are not supposed to be rachamim. Mitzvahs are gezeros. Hashem's mitzvahs, we don't always know the reason why. But Shiluach HaKan generates within us a certain amount of rachamim. The purpose of the mitzvahs are to train us. I mean, some mitzvahs, the chagim, for example, are what they are. But a lot of the mitzvahs are to train us to become better human beings. So for that, we are trained. And that's what you have in Parshas Ki Tetse. You have a whole bunch of mitzvahs. You have the mitzvah of a sorah or moreh. You have the mitzvah of helping other people, a shor and a chamor. You have a mitzvah of not wearing different clothes. There's a halacha that men are supposed to dress like men and women are supposed to dress like women. So they bring down that Yael, when she killed Sisera, didn't use a sword or a knife. She used a tent peg. The peg of a tent to stick it through his head. Why didn't she use a sword? Because a sword is what a man uses. A soldier fights with a sword. And in those days, women didn't do that. It talks about not wearing shatnez, it talks about wearing clothes, tzitzis. We have in Parshas Ki Tetse the mitzvah of yibum, chalitza, gitin, kedushin. There are many mesechtos of Shas find themselves in this week's Parsha. There's so many mitzvahs that go with this week's Parsha alone. Okay.
This parasha we read in the holiday too, right? In the holiday.
Not really. Re'eh is read on some of the holidays. Tetse, no. Nope. It's read, no, it's before Rosh Hashanah. Next week we have the Tochacha. We're going to talk about that. Okay. I want to share with you a speech. This is a speech given at the graduation of the University of Texas. That's a college. U of T, University of Texas, is a college, a very large college. Probably has, tens of thousands of students. The person who's giving the speech, his name is Admiral William H. McRaven. Okay. If someone has the rank of an admiral, what part of the armed forces is he in?
The high.
But what is he in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines? What is he? To be an admiral.
Navy.
Navy.
Admiral.
An admiral means you're in the Navy.
Navy, yeah.
An admiral is the same as a general.
Yeah.
Okay. And this William H. McRaven was very high up. He was a highly decorated Navy admiral. And he went to the University of Texas, and he was asked to be the speaker at their graduation about a year or two ago. He's also a Navy SEAL. What does that mean, that he's a Navy SEAL?
Very strong to fight.
Well, the Navy SEALs are a elite
Special.
special forces of the Navy. Okay? Just like
Marines,
the Green Berets and just like the Marines.
Marines.
What?
Marines, no?
The
Seals,
Navy
no, seals.
SEALs is Navy.
Yes.
Now, the training to become a Navy SEAL takes 6 months. Usually the class begins with about 300 cadets, and by the time the 6 months are over, you're left with about 30.
Wow.
Okay,
Sometimes
so from
10.
300,
Sometimes 10 even.
sometimes not even 10, correct. So he gets up there, and he's speaking to the class. So it's very interesting. He graduated U of T. So this is how he begins his talk. He says, I remember when I graduated. I remember the parties I went to. I remember my girlfriend because she became my wife. I remember everything except one thing I don't remember. I don't remember who the guest speaker was. And I don't remember what he said. So there's a good chance, he says, that in 30 years, none of you are going to remember that I spoke. So I'm going to speak short. Maybe the one thing you'll remember is, I don't know who spoke, but I do remember he spoke short. One thing. Okay. So this is what his speech was. He said, I want to share with you 10 things I learned as a Navy SEAL. Because when you graduate college, you want to go out there and change the world. So I want to tell you 10 lessons about changing the world. The first lesson, lesson number 1. When we got up in the morning, what was the first thing we had to do before we went out? What? That's what you do. But what was the first thing a non-Jewish Navy SEAL had to do? You ready? We had to make our bed.
What?
We had to make our bed.
Bed.
Pastor zapravi.
And then we got inspected. We stood by our bed at attention till the training officer made sure that our bed was perfect. And he said, for years, I never understood
Why?
why we have to make our bed. What a waste of time. What a waste of time. We're soldiers. We're the best. We're the top. We're big, he-men, tough men. We're not chambermaids. We don't make beds. So he said, I learned later in life, why it was so important. He says, every day you want to accomplish things. Always start your day with a small task that you can accomplish easily. Make your bed. This way, in the first 5 minutes, job 1 is done. Now it's easier to do job 2 and job 3. And he says, if you have a day where everything goes bad, and you accomplish nothing, at least you come back to a made bed. At least you come back home, your bed is made.
Yeah, you look at it, it makes you happy.
What?
And you look at it, it makes you happy.
Makes you accomplish something. Now you should know something. In Baltimore, in yeshiva, they were so strict on making our beds. If we got up in the morning and went to the base medrash to learn and didn't make our bed, we were sent back to make our beds and we were fined $1 or $2 or $5. Even if we slept, took a nap Shabbat afternoon, and we got up at 4 o'clock, we had to make our bed. And we used to say, no, you're not supposed to make your bed, it's preparing for on Shabbat, for after Shabbat. And the Rosh Hashiva said, no problem, $5. You don't want to pay the $5? Make your bed. Even if you get up 5 minutes before Shabbat is over. They used to send people to check the rooms to make sure the beds were made. You didn't make your bed? $5.
$5
Knas.
fine?
Make your bed.
Yes, it'd be me.
Okay?
So what about
Now,
Shabbos preparing to next?
He didn't care. He says,
that is
make your bed is training.
But
The
it's
yeshiva did this. This was not the Navy SEALs.
not Hilul Shabbat?
No. We maybe thought it was worse than the Navy SEAls, the yeshiva, but it wasn't that way. Now, you should know something, not that
But
it
that
makes
is
a
in the
difference.
yeshiva. What
What?
about that in the yeshiva? But what about at home?
So, you should know something. I've been married 40 years, as you know. And if you ask my wife, she will tell you that in 40 years, she never made my bed once. Never once.
You do.
I make my bed. Every morning, I make my own bed. My wife has never, ever made my bed.
Not a one.
Not once. In 40 years.
So it's like
Now,
a
you can
habit.
call her. This is a challenge. You can pick up the phone.
It's like a habit.
It's a habit that I spent all my years in yeshiva doing. So I make my bed. She never makes my bed. Even when the cleaning lady comes and she's going to change the linen, and my wife says she doesn't even bother making her own bed because she's going to fix it, I make my bed anyway. Every morning I make my bed. And I'm not a Navy SEAL. Maybe.
What
If
even
I was,
in
I'm not going to
Shabbat
tell you.
too?
What?
When you
Shabbat
sleep in the
too?
Shabbat?
Yes, I get up on Shabbat morning at 5:45 in the morning.
In the afternoon?
I make my bed and then I go to daven for 7. In the afternoon, the same thing.
You do it on
If I
Shabbos?
take a nap, I get up, let's say 3, 4 o'clock. Shabbat is over 7, 8 o'clock. I make my bed.
So we allowed to do it on the Shabbos? I mean, after
I'm just telling you when I went to Baltimore to yeshiva to Ner Yisrael, they said yes. That's how I was
You make
trained.
a neatly or sloppy?
I do it neat,
We see the
not
difference
hospital quarters, but you can come any day. What? What'd you say?
We, I don't know, it's Saturday night, Saturday when you nap, to make it like the slab, just throw the blanket over.
No, I don't do it that way. When I come upstairs to go to sleep, my bed is made. And it was made since 7 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning. And it makes no difference, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the bed is made. So this admiral said that he understands, as he got older in life, the importance of what the Navy SEAL training was. Number 2. Listen to number 2. He says, when you're in the SEALs training, it's the Navy, right? So you have boat crews. You have 20 boats, and each boat has 10 men or 15 men. They were crews, boat crews. And you had tasks. You had to paddle to a certain point. You had to go on the rapids. Whatever the challenge was, there was training. He says that everybody, if you had 5 people or 10 people in the boat, everybody had a job. And if 5 people were paddling, you all had to paddle at the same time together. He said, in life, if you want to change the world, you have to know you can't do it by yourself. You need a team. And it only works when the team works together. Okay? Now, your team can be your family, but you're a team. Nobody, if everybody's going in their own way, doing their own thing, you'll sink. And you'll fail. He says, in life, you're like a boat crew. You must work together. He says the boat crews were by size. He was 6 foot tall, Everybody in his crew was 6 foot tall, 6'1", 6'2". There was one boat crew where everybody was 5'5". They were little guys, short guys with short hands and short feet. They used to call them the Munchkins. You know where the Munchkins come from? Which movie had the Munchkins in it? No, that's the Chipmunks. The Munchkins come from the Wizard of Oz. You know, the Wizard of Oz had little people, the Munchkins. And we used to make fun of the Munchkins because they were 5'5", they were short. He says, would you know it? In most of the challenges, which boat came in first? The Munchkins. He says, from there I learned a great lesson, he says. Don't measure a person by the size of their flippers, or their color, or their race. You measure them by the size of their heart. This group, they were small guys, but they were so together, and they were so dedicated, and so hardworking, they could accomplish anything. Don't measure a person, color, race, religion, size, none of it matters. Their heart is what matters. He says, every day we stood inspection. Our uniforms had to be perfect. Clean, pressed, the hat, everything. Nobody for 6 months could pass that inspection every single day. When you failed, they made you roll in the sand. Now your uniform was covered in sand. And then you had to spend the rest of the day cleaning it to get it ready. And when you were covered in sand, everybody used to call you a sugar cookie. Because a sugar cookie is a cookie with little dots on it like sand. So you were called the sugar cookie. He says, in life, everybody is a sugar cookie at one point. That's life. Everybody fails something. Everybody's a sugar cookie. Get over it. You can survive. He says, if you fell short, you didn't accomplish your duty, the task, you were put on a list called the circus. The circus meant that after everybody finished at 5, 6 o'clock and went back for supper, you had to stay an extra 2 hours. And you had to do calisthenics and push-ups or sit-ups, whatever it is. So he says the next day you were exhausted. So you made the circus again, and another 2 hours, another 2 hours. You would think that after 3, 4, 5 days you wash out. He says, you know what happened? Just the opposite. By the 3rd or 4th day, these weaklings became stronger. And they got off the circus list. And now, they never went back on, because the circus list made them stronger, that they survived the task. He says, sometimes in life, we get beaten. We're on the circus list. And we have to work harder. Don't get depressed. Realize that by working harder, you'll get off the circus list and you'll be stronger, he says. Very interesting. Like a Baal Musar. Very, very interesting. Let's go a little bit further. He says there was an obstacle course. Every day they had different obstacle courses. There was one obstacle course that at the end had this enormous slide that you had to work your way down. He says nobody broke the record of that obstacle course. Let's say they took 20 minutes to do that course. That was a record that stood for 30 years. One day, he says, our team broke the record. Why? The guy we sent on the obstacle course, when he got to the top, decided, why should I go down backwards? I'll just fly frontwards. It was gutsy, it was risky, but he flew, and he broke the record, like by 5 minutes or something, he broke the record.
What's the obstacles?
An obstacle course is where you have to run under things and over things and through barbed wire.
Yeah, what's the
This was a big, you had to climb up a big tower, then you have to climb down again, slide down. He says, sometimes in life, you take chances, and you go down head first, but you win, and you break records. Listen to the next thing, fascinating thing. He says that the Navy SEAL training is in San Diego. You know where San Diego is? California. Okay? And there was something called Hell Week. We're going to get to that in a moment. But in the training was night training. And they had to swim, between a boat and an island. There was a night swim at midnight off San Diego in the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. as we're all getting there, putting on our wetsuits and getting ready, our instructors come in and they show us a slideshow. What's the slideshow? The instructor gets up and he says, I just want you to know, gentlemen, that off the coast of San Diego are sharks.
Wow.
And there are 5 different kinds of sharks you could meet. So we're going to show you the different sharks. And he shows you pictures of all these different sharks. You're crazy? We're going to go swimming at midnight with sharks? Then the trainer, the officer training us, says to us, I just want you to know, so far in the history of SEAL training, no one was ever eaten by a shark. So please don't be the first ones to get eaten by a shark. Then he says to us, if a shark starts swimming towards you and wants to make you a midnight snack, let me give you 2 pieces of advice. The first advice is stand your ground, because sharks can sense fear. So if you're afraid, they'll know it. So the first thing is stand tough. If the shark doesn't get the message and still comes at you,
Like this.
then our best advice to you is punch him in the nose.
Really?
That's what he said. So this guy got up, this Navy SEAL, he says, I learned that in life, there are sharks. In the world out there, there are predators, there are sharks.
Wow.
And they prey on the weak. So the first thing is, you're a Navy SEAL. Be tough. And sometimes, if they don't get the message, you gotta punch them in the nose. You know, sometimes you gotta punch them in the nose. I know a lawyer who's preparing a lawsuit against somebody, and he said, sometimes you hold out a carrot, which means you try to settle. Sometimes you just take a big stick and you go whack, and you hit him on the nose. That's what he said. Okay? Next. He says one of the most dangerous swims is in the nighttime. We have to swim under a sunken boat, and it's pitch black. You can't see in front of you. It's pitch black. You're literally going by your senses. He says the only way to succeed when you're swimming underwater when it's pitch black is to remain calm and be at your best.
Yes, sir.
He says in life, there are challenges thrown at you. And people panic and make decisions when they panic. Don't make decisions when you panic. Remain calm, he said. He said there was such a thing called Hell Week. In Hell Week, you were in mud. You were literally up to your neck in mud, and you had to stay there like that for hours and hours. And it was raining, and it was cold, and you were tired. And they would make announcements. You want to leave the mud? No problem. If 5 soldiers get up and say we quit, everybody can go back to the barracks. And no one wanted to get up and say we quit. And they would do that after the next hour. You tired yet? You're cold? You're hungry? Would you like to go home, get a good meal? No problem. There's 30 of you out here. Choose 5 people who quit. You all can go home. So he said, all of a sudden, one of the soldiers started singing a song. And then the next soldier sang a song, and they all started to sing. And of course the instructor says, hey, stop that singing, you can't sing out here, you're going to be out here another 3 hours. We didn't care. We just sang. He says, by the time we were through, the time passed. We were so focused on the songs we were singing, we didn't think about the cold, the night, nothing bothered us. He says, sometimes in life, when you're feeling down or depressed, the best thing to do is put on a record, play a tune, sing a song, that can get you through. He says, it's amazing what a song can do. Number 10, the last thing he said, very, very interesting. He says, in the middle of the compound, you know, where the barracks were and everything, the middle, there was a bell. And at any time, if you wanted to quit, all you had to do was go, ring the bell. That's all you had to do.
Go home and quit
And
and
you
go
could go
home.
home. At any time. The bell was there, you want to quit, you get up, you ring the bell, you can go home. You could be in the Navy, you're just not a SEAL. He says, in life, there's always an opportunity in any situation to get up and quit. We all have that. At any time, we can always quit. He says, one message I give to you. You want to change the world?
Don't quit.
Never ring the bell. Don't quit. Whatever happens, find a way to survive.
Right.
Never ring the bell.
Can you,
That's what William
can we
McCraven.
go shortly from 1 to 9 again? Because I thought it's only 7 or 8.
Let's see if I can go shortly for the 9.
No,
So I did sum it up. It's very interesting. I always do that. He
No, but
says
just
over
because I
here,
was so-
start each day with a task completed.
Yeah.
Find someone to help you through life. Teamwork.
Uh-huh.
Respect everyone, even the munchkins came out first. Know that at times life is not fair and you will fail. You will be a cookie. You know, you'll be a, what was it called? A sugar cookie.
Sugar cookie.
You'll be a sugar cookie. Okay? And when you fail, you may have to work harder. Life is tough, but the toughness will make you stronger. Okay? Take risks. Go down the slide. When you're in a very dangerous situation, you have to remain calm. Make calm decisions. There are bullies in the world. Sometimes you have to stand your ground. And if the bully doesn't get the message, sometimes you have to punch him in the nose. Always help the downtrodden. When you're sad, sing a song. Bring up your spirits. And remember, in this world, there's a bell. And you can always quit. But if you want to change the world, never ring the bell. Now this is online. You can see William H. McCraven, the commencement means graduation speech for University of Texas. And you'll hear it. What I just said, it's online. It's like 12-minute speech. That's it, 12 minutes. It was short. And I listened to it a few times and I made notes of it. I thought you would enjoy it.
Yeah.
Listen to the next thing I want to share with you. The next thing I really want you to listen to very carefully. I'm keeping an eye on the clock because, again, I have to leave on time because I have people coming. I don't always, but sometimes I just can't avoid it. Listen to this. I often tell you stories from Rabbi Zilberstein. Rabbi Zilberstein in Ramot al-Hanan in Eretz Yisrael. He's the brother-in-law of Rabbi Ephraim Ki. He was the son-in-law of Rabbi Yosh.
Sephardi guy.
I'm not sure he was a Sephardi guy, but okay. He wrote this story in a book called Niflosecho Asicho. Listen to this story. It's a fascinating story. You often hear these stories because some of the Rabbeim, tell you these stories. So you may have heard the story. Okay? Listen to the story. There was a woman during the Holocaust. She gave her child to a non-Jewish person to watch. And she paid the family whatever jewelry she had and silver. And she said, if I survive the Holocaust, I'll come back and claim my son. But if I don't, please take care of my child. Many people did this. Many Jewish people did this during World War II. She was lucky. She survived the Holocaust. So she came and picked up her child, and I guess she came to America, came to New York, Williamsburg, wherever, East Side, wherever the Jews were living. But because she gave everything away, she was broke. She had no money. She worked very hard, barely had 2 pennies in her purse. Every day, her son went to yeshiva, and she would send with her son for lunch a slice of bread. That was lunch. Sometimes there was a little fat on the bread, sometimes she put something on the bread, but most of the time it was a slice of bread in a little bag. That was lunch. One day, she didn't even have the slice of bread. So she put a note in the bag. I'm sorry I don't have any lunch for you today, and I know you're hungry, but when you come home, I hope to have a very delicious supper for you, to make up for no lunch. The kid was upset. He was hungry. It was 12:30. He had nothing to eat, probably had very little to eat for breakfast. So what did he do? He walked out of the yeshiva and started to go up the streets, the blocks, looking for a house with a mezuzah. He found that house with a mezuzah. He went up to the door, knocked on the door. A little girl answered, maybe your age, a 7, 8-year-old girl. And you're 9, but a 7, 8-year-old
I'm
girl.
9.
How old are you?
I'm
13. Oh, very. Look how time flies. I remember you when you were there. I apologize. So it wasn't a girl it was a girl younger than you, like 7, 8 years old. And she answers the door, and this little boy says, "Could I have a glass of water?" The girl was a very smart girl. See, that's what she was like you. She was a very smart girl. And she realized that this kid is asking for a glass of water. He's probably hungry. So she brought him 4 pieces of cake, 4 slices of cake, and a glass of milk. And right there, he devoured it and drank it up. He like ate it up like, and he writes, Rabbi Zilberstein writes that when you heard the story, this person said to him it was the best lunch he ever had. The day that his mother didn't give him lunch, he had the best lunch he ever had. Okay. On his way back to yeshiva, he said to himself, "I promise I will not be poor. I am not going to live like my mother lives. I'm going to do well in school. I'm going to be something. I'm going to make a lot of money in my life." That's what he said to himself. And he graduated high school, and he went off to medical school and became a cardiac surgeon, thoracic cardiac surgeon, head of the department, I think it was at Mount Sinai, head of the department. And Rabbi Zilberstein writes that this guy got the toughest cases. When people were brought in, only the toughest cases went to him. He gives an example that there was a case, a woman came in cardiac arrest, no heartbeat. Everybody says, let's just call her dead and just end it. He said no, and he jumped in and he performed open heart surgery. 3 times on the table she coded, she stopped breathing. 3 times he brought her back and he saved her life. And he writes, Rabbi Zilberstein, that she was in the ICU. Of course, she was still unconscious from the surgery, and the doctor went in to check on her and check her vitals, and the family was there, her children, her parents, and he started to schmooze with them, they were Jewish, where are you from, where did you live? He finds out that they come from Williamsburg. He says, oh yeah, I used to live in Williamsburg. What street? Told him the street. Really? I remember a corner house on that street. He says, yeah, that's our house. I have 3 boys and 1 girl. This is the girl that gave him the cake.
Wow.
And he saved her life.
Saved his life?
He saved her life. He was the doctor, he saved her life. The surgery cost $180,000. This Rabbi Zilberstein writes it cost $180,000.
In Israel?
No.
It's here?
Here. And this insurance only covered about $30,000. So the family went down to the financial aid office in the hospital, and they got the bill, balanced to $150,000, and they were talking about, they would refinance their house, sell out, how they're going to pay. They were trying to work out a plan. All of a sudden, they look at the bill, and on the bottom it says balance due 0. So they said there's a mistake on the bill, and they said, yeah, whoa, how did that happen? And they turned it over, and on the back was written, "This is thank you for 4 slices of cake and a glass of milk." The doctor paid the bill.
You become tougher because of that.
He says, when I needed you, you were there, you saved my life. And you didn't have to do anything heroic. 4 slices of cake and a glass of milk to a hungry child is $1 million, is gold. He says, you saved my life that day. And you made me promise that I would be successful. Now I'm paying you back. It's not about the money. It's about hakarat hatov. It's about realizing, recognizing. Let me tell you another story. Last night, I don't like to talk about some of the things that affect me. Last night, I used to be principal in a school called Torah Academy. In 1990s, when I first came to New York, it was a Russian school. We started it from scratch. We brought in the immigrants that were coming, and we started Torah Academy. We started with 7th grade for boys and for girls. In 4 years, we had 450 students. It was in the same building where Ezra Academy is. I was the principal. I had no assistant principals. I ran the boys division, the girls division. They had no money. I ran it all. So last night we had a reunion for one class. One class said, you know what, it's been 20 years since we graduated, a little bit more than 20 years. They decided to have a reunion. So they invited me. So I came, my wife and I went, and there were about 40 girls. Now you have to remember, these girls, when they graduated were 18, are now 38, 39, 40. They're all married, most of them. They have children, 3 or 4 children. Many of them would cover their hair, wearing sheitelach. We sat there, it was an amazing thing. People we haven't seen for 20 some odd years that were students in the school. So one girl got up and said, listen to what she said. She said, in 9th grade, I threw a temper tantrum and you had no choice but to throw me out of the school. Which is true, I remember that. And there were many times the Russians were very tough, as you know, and my teachers were Ashkenazim, and they wanted me to throw kids out of the school. And I almost never did. And the teachers would often say to me, you know, you're supposed to support your teachers, not the kids. And I would say to them, it's easy to talk that way, but in 20 years you'll be sorry that you threw that kid out. But sometimes they would gang up on me, I had no choice. So this girl says, in 9th grade, you asked me to leave the school, you threw me out. Which is true. One of the other girls, who I know very well, who comes to me all the time with questions and thoughts, and she says to me, you know, Rabbi Bryks, I just want you to know, I was always angry at you, even till this very day, that you threw that girl out. Because I came to you and I begged you to reconsider, and you said everything is under control, but you threw her out of the school. How could everything be under control? This girl turned to the other girl and said, you don't know, do you? She says, no what? A few days later, Rabbi Bryks took me to Shevach High School. So I should go to Shevach High School. She says, what? You didn't go to public school? She says, no, he took me to Shevach High School. And he fought for you to get into Shevach High School? He said, yeah, he fought for me to get into high school. She felt so embarrassed. She says, for all these years I was angry. He says, I owe you an apology. He took her to Shevach High School. That's life. We make decisions, and you never know which decision is right, which decision is wrong. Sometimes what looks to you as a horrible situation is really a bracha in disguise. It's impossible to know. But what I said to the girls was, when I spoke to them last night, I said to them, one thing I can tell you. We had a staff of 40 people. Nobody was a teacher there because of the money, because we paid nothing. We paid next to nothing. If they taught in the school, it wasn't because of the money. For money, they could have gotten a job in 100 other schools. They taught because they loved every kid. It was a certain dedication they had to make a difference in your lives. And look at you. Look around the room. You could not believe this class. What was a rough high school class where they barely spoke English. This one works in an office in Manhattan. This one works in the lawyer's office. This one is an optometrist. All accomplished. I'm telling you, some send their kids to Chaim Berlin. I mean, it's an amazing class. One of about 30 classes that we ran. And we charged them $10 a month tuition. That's what the tuition was. $10 a month. And you should have seen what was going on there to try to make this work. The hours it took to make this work. That was my experience of last night. Sometimes you feel like a Navy SEAL. There are lessons to be learned.
Only girls came?
It was just one class. It was only 10th grade graduate, there was this 10th grade class that was having a reunion. I had 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 450
But
students.
and the 10,
But this one class wanted to have a reunion.
boys also?
Yeah. Some of the girls married some of the boys in the school. And they were saying, you know my husband is, I know their brothers and everything else. Have a good night.